The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974 is a cult classic loved by horror fanatics and general moviegoers alike. It spawned many sequels, spin-offs, and remakes, with the most recent of course being Netflix's direct sequel to the original film. The series is renowned for its incredible violence, and the sequel keeps that theme well intact. That's why today on the Summarizer, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. The film opens with a TV playing a documentary on the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where 5 people were attacked and 4 were murdered, though 1 survives. While this event will directly affect the plot, we won't be adding these deaths to the death count for this film as they occurred in the previous film and are just being referenced. Upon zooming out from the TV, we see Lila roaming around a gas station until her sister Melody walks in. The two of them chat a little bit, revealing over the course of the next couple scenes that the both of them, as well as their friend Dante and Ruth, are planning to buy what they think to be an abandoned city named Harlow to set up shop for like-minded individuals. They believe this city will be safer than the rest of the world, a haven, but unfortunately an infamous killer has been using this place as a safe space of his own. While setting up a whole city for like-minded people sounds a bit like a cult, the group never refer to themselves as one. One man in the movie even points out the culty nature of their plans though, that man being Richter, the good old country boy who lives around these parts. Lila notices that he's carrying a pistol and makes a snide comment about how small of an, package he must have to be overcompensating with a weapon like that. Richter overhears this and decides to inform Lila that he actually carries the gun due to wild animals being around the area. Melody and Milo get uncomfortable and urge Lila to the car, heading off to their oasis before some of their potential investors arrive to take a look. The group gets stopped by cops after leaving the gas station, but thankfully the interaction does not end in anyone being shot at. Instead, the cops give the group a hard time about not being from around the area until Melody reveals that someone she knows taught her a saying known only to the locals of Harlow.
When Harlow sunflower blooms, winter is doomed.
After the cop finishes her sentence, confirming that is indeed known by the locals, he lets the group continue on into the city. Upon arriving, the group excitedly points out all of the possible things they could build in their new space, and all of the exciting new adventures they can't wait to take in their new, formerly abandoned city. Before realizing actually it isn't abandoned at all, just small. A garage door flies open, revealing none other than Richter. Yep, he lives here. Of course he does. After talking to Milo for a bit with the group, Milo notices a Confederate flag being flown outside the second-story window of one of the buildings. After noticing this, he decides to try to find a way to remove it before the investors arrive by going in the building and pulling it down from the inside, since it's presumably empty. However, he quickly learns that the house is actually occupied by an old woman named Virginia and her adopted orphan son. Virginia, Dante, and Melody get in a bit of an altercation over the Confederate flag, with Virginia insisting she means no harm by it, but Milo not being convinced. Milo demands the woman get out of the house as the bank has reclaimed the property and he has the title, but Virginia corrects him and says she actually still has the title. However, when Milo asks her to show it, she refuses, which Milo chalks up to her lying, saying she doesn't have it at all. Dante, frustrated, runs to get the cops to exile the woman from the house, but upon walking her out the door, she has a heart attack, vomiting violently and moaning in pain. Her son, Ruth, and the 2 cops load her into a van and head for the hospital. While this is happening, Dante and Melody are talking to the investors, and Lila's getting to know Richter a little better. We see during her conversation with Richter that Lila has such a strong stance against guns because she was once in a school shooting. Though she got shot, she obviously survived and is here to tell the story. This brings our death count to 5, as there were probably more victims in the actual event, but on screen 5 bodies can be seen surrounding Lila. As this is happening, Virginia dies in the back of the van. Upon her dying, her son snaps and things get crazy. Leatherface, as we've come to know him, immediately snaps one of the cops' wrists and stabs him repeatedly with his own bone, bringing our death count to 7. After doing this, he crashes the van, though the other cop and Ruth are presumably still alive. That is, until Leatherface hears the second cop coughing and decides to bash his head in with a canister. Ruth watches the iconic yet horrific sight of Leatherface preparing to wear his adopted mother's face before coming back to the car to finish Ruth off. Though the pair struggle for what feels like an eternity, it actually ends rather abruptly with, you guess it, Ruth's death. This brings our death count to 9. Back at Harlow, Melody is losing her mind over the news that Virginia has passed, but doesn't know Ruth has as well, as Ruth sent a text about Virginia before her own untimely demise. Dante, however, doesn't think that he's at fault, and is continuing to eagerly show around investors, despite Melody's wishes to call everything off and just go home. Shortly after these events, Sally is alerted that a grim murder has occurred that could be the same man that attacked her and her friends those 50 years ago. She of course jumps at the opportunity for revenge and heads for Harlow herself. While Sally is handling her own business and Lila and the investors roam about the town and their party bus, Melody and Dante decide to search Virginia's house to see if she was in fact in possession of the deed, because the guilt is eating Melody alive. Before they head off to the house, Richter confiscates their car keys upon hearing about Virginia's death and says they can only have them back when they prove Virginia didn't have the deed. Of course, while searching through Virginia's room, Melody finds the deed. Virginia wasn't lying. The bank really hadn't repossessed her house, and they truly did kick a woman out of her own home. Their karma is instantaneous though, as Leatherface has returned to the house and finds Dante downstairs. After trying to escape through the kitchen, Leatherface grabs Dante and slashes his face with a butcher knife, leaving a grotesque scar around his face and the removal of one of his lips. Though he's lost a lot of blood, he isn't dead just yet, so our kill count is unaltered. After finding Dante on the floor and Leatherface standing beside him, Melody runs to hide in the closet of Virginia's room. While hiding there, she sees Leatherface grab one of Virginia's dresses and cry over it at her vanity. While Leatherface's actions are far from justified, this moment is still clearly heartbreaking for Melody, as she now knows that Dante and herself were in the wrong for kicking Virginia out of the house. While Melody is trapped, it begins storming, which causes the investor, Catherine, and all the party people traveling with her to usher themselves into the party bus. Catherine quickly realizes that Dante isn't around though, and decides to go looking for him. Luckily, right at this time, Dante stumbles out into the street where he's seen by both Catherine and Richter, who's much closer to him. Richter rushes over and asks Dante who did this to him, but because his mouth is so messed up, he can't do much more than gargle. Unfortunately, Dante has lost too much blood, and this is where he finally dies, bringing our death count to 10. Catherine heads back to the bus and urges the driver to keep the door closed, but for whatever reason never mentions the events that just occurred to anyone else. Lila notices her fear and tries to figure out what's going on, but can't for the most part. Richter picks up his gun and heads off to look for whoever harmed Dante, going straight for Virginia's house. Upon arriving, he goes upstairs and sees Melody use her foot from under the bed to shift a mirror in the room that reveals Leatherface is coming for Richter. Oh, and during the fight, as he lies on the ground struggling for air, Richter shows Melody her keys that he earlier took. As this is happening, Sally finds Virginia's faceless body propped up in the woods, confirming her suspicions. This is indeed the work of Leatherface. Lila gets sick of being trapped in the bus and not being told what's going on, so she decides to go look for Melody herself. While Lila's on the way to look for her, Leatherface notices that Melody's in his house and begins to torment her like everyone else. There she takes an opportunity to crawl into the floorboards. However, this is when Leatherface grabs his iconic chainsaw and things get intense. For the next 5 minutes or so, Melody will be frighteningly scurrying across the dirty ground, desperately trying to avoid the madman's spinning blades overhead. Thankfully, Lila finds Melody as she's backed up against the vent and pulls her through, allowing them to run to the party bus. Melody is so in shock from everything happening to her that she also doesn't say anything though, resulting in the horrific image of people partying and having a carefree good time as a murderer lurks the very same streets they sit on. They tell the driver to go, and he does, but after seeing someone standing on the street, he stops for them and gets out. We aren't exactly sure why he does this, but it ends pretty horribly for him, considering the immediate next thing we see is his head at the bus's door, bringing our official kill count to 12. This brings about one of the most horrific scenes of the entire movie, when Leatherface enters the bus and everyone on board immediately starts recording him.
Try anything and you cancel, bro.
After that, Lila climbs out of the bus, but Melody gets stuck. Leatherface cuts a hole in the bathroom wall and tries to open it from the other side, but Melody stabs him with the keys Richter left her from earlier, buying her a little bit of time to crawl out as well. Lila and Melody run off into the night before finding Sally, whose car they get in hopes for help. However, Sally is a little too preoccupied with her revenge fantasies to help Melody and Lila, so she leaves them in the car and heads off to find Leatherface. Upon finding him, she demands that he say her name and acknowledge that he knows what he did to her and her friends, but he refuses, staying silent. This makes Sally realize that he doesn't remember her specifically, and that her friends were nothing but numbers on Leatherface's kill count. In shock, she does nothing to Leatherface, essentially allowing him to walk off and find Melody and Lila. Right when he does though, Melody shoots him in the back. Sally throws Melody and Lila the keys and tells them to get lost as she heads into an intense battle with Leatherface, though it unfortunately ends with Leatherface stabbing Sally in the stomach with his chainsaw. Melody tries to run Leatherface over, but he throws his chainsaw at the car, causing them to swerve and crash, which results in a severely hurt Melody being impaled and unable to move. Melody tells Lila she's gonna have to leave her to die, but Lila insists she shouldn't. Leatherface shows up, however, so Lila runs to try to distract him. He has Lila on the ground and is about to end her life when a hurt but still alive Sally shoots him to scare him off and loads her gun with more ammo before giving it to Lila and passing on for good, bringing our kill count to 22. Before Sally passes, she tells Lila she needs to kill Leatherface now or else he'll haunt her forever, which inspires Lila to do just that. She heads off to fight Leatherface while Melody is still trapped and screaming in pain, but managing to free herself. Lila walks into a building with a hole in the floor filled with water that she gets dragged into with Leatherface. After an intense struggle, she makes her way to the top, grabs her gun, and gets a couple good shots on Leatherface. After she runs out of ammo, Melody appears as she has apparently freed herself, grabs Leatherface's chainsaw, and gives him a taste of his own medicine with a swift uppercut. This sends Leatherface's body deep into the water, bringing our kill count to 23. It's finally over. They've suffered a whole lot, but Lila and Melody can finally call it a day and go home for true safety. They get in their self-driving car and tell it to take them back home so they can put this whole traumatic event behind them. However, the light on the other side of the tunnel is quickly put out when Leatherface reaches his arm in the slowly moving car, pulls Melody out the window, and cuts her head clean off. Leatherface isn't actually dead, but Melody is, leaving our kill count unchanged at 23. Poor Lila just can't catch a break. That was Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, with a total of 23 kills. Comment which series or movies you'd like me to summarize for future videos and make a kill count for. See you later!
Go to work.
Okay. Bye.